Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm finally going to be sitting down and filming my review of the Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is a book that I read at the end of 2024, so it's almost been 9 months since I read it, which is crazy. And part of the reason why it's taken me so long to film a review is because for every review I obviously plan it, I write a script. And this is one of those books that I just couldn't do it straight after I'd finished reading the book because it is a mammoth book, firstly. And secondly, there are so many layers to the book that I've genuinely needed this time to kind of really reflect it. And even then, there's still much more reflection to do. So today I'm going to spend about 20 to 25 minutes kind of just walking you through my thoughts on this book. There will be spoilers, so do bear that in mind. And with that out of the way, let's get started. Few novels have ever looked so deeply into the human soul as The Brothers Karamazov. It's a story about a family, but really it's about everything. Love and hate, faith and doubt, sin and redemption, reason and madness. This isn't just one of the great Russian novels, it is one of the greatest novels about the human condition. It's a book that asks us, what does it mean to be free, to believe, and to forgive? The novel takes place in a small Russian town in the 19th century. The patriarch, Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov, is a grotesque man, a glutton, a lecturer, and a miser. He's cruel to his servants, very neglectful of his children, and he is absolutely obsessed with money and women. His 3 legitimate sons couldn't be more different. We have the eldest, Dmitri. He also goes by the name of Mitya, and he is an impulsive and very passionate man. In a way, he is a man of extremes. Then we have the middle child, Ivan. He's the intellectual, he's skeptical, and he is tormented by philosophical questions. And then finally, we have Alyosha, who is the youngest. He is a monk, he's a gentle novice who is pure-hearted and deeply spiritual. There is also another character who is the illegitimate son of Karamazov, of Smerdyakov, and I definitely have butchered that, so I apologise. And he is a servant who may secretly be Fyodor's illegitimate son. And he is a quiet, eerie presence that is constantly lurking on the edges of the family drama. The story builds around conflict. Dmitri's inheritance dispute with his father, Ivan's growing spiritual crisis, and Alyosha's struggle to live out the Christian love taught by his mentor, Father Zoshima. Then the unthinkable happens. Fyodor Pavlovich is murdered. The town is shocked and everybody accuses Dmitri, the eldest son. But the question isn't necessarily just who killed him. It's why every son bears some share of the guilt. I remember very distinctly as I was reading this book, I felt like I was falling into a philosophical thunderstorm. There's passion, theology, humour, despair, all packed into a murder mystery that's really an inquiry into the human condition. What I love most about it is how alive every emotion feels. Dostoevsky doesn't judge his characters, which is why I think he's one of the most incredible writers. He lets them wrestle with their own demons in full view. There's a messy, almost feverish energy in how people talk, how they confess, and often contradict themselves. It's ugly and beautiful at the same time. And unlike most classics, this isn't just moral philosophy wrapped in a story. It's funny, it's tragic, it's shockingly modern, and you can feel the chaos of real life in every single conversation. Let's jump into writing style and technique. And in my opinion, there are very few writers like Dostoevsky. It's emotional, it's erratic, and it is deeply, deeply psychological. You can tell that he wrote this book in bursts of inspiration because sometimes it is chaotic and sometimes it is divinely clear. The tone shifts constantly. One moment we're in a farce, the next we're in a theological debate or a tearful confession. He can go from absurd comedy to spiritual revelation in a single paragraph. That volatility is the point. It mirrors the instability of the human consciousness. The narrator is particularly fascinating. He's not a neutral observer. He's part of the town, gossiping about events, guessing motives, and sometimes even admitting that he doesn't know everything. That intimacy really makes the story feel alive, because it's like we're being told it by a friend who can't stop talking. The pacing is very uneven. Sometimes it's incredibly slow, and then it's explosive, then it's slow again. You might spend dozens of pages listening to philosophical monologues, then suddenly witness a scene of violence or heartbreak. But that rhythm is what gives the story weight. The long dialogues build tension until the emotion bursts through. Dostoevsky's key technique is contrast. Light against dark, belief against doubt, reason against emotion. His characters are all walking paradoxes, just like all of us humans are, each torn between faith and despair. The prose itself becomes a battlefield for the human soul. I'm now going to talk about characters, and I'm going to do a little section on the three brothers and maybe one or two other characters. I think it's worth kind of zooming in on the three brothers for a little bit. I think the character work in this book is absolutely incredible, because there is just so much depth to each of them, even the ones that we barely get on page. Like, you know who these people are, where they're coming from, what their views are, and why they believe the things that they believe in. That's so difficult to do, yet Dostoevsky does it for pretty much every single character. But let's kick off properly with Dmitry Karamazov, and this is the man of passion. As I mentioned, Dmitry is the eldest son, and he is just pure impulse embodied. He's emotional, sensual, quick to anger, quick to forgive, and he's constantly caught between his better and worse selves. He fights with his father over inheritance, over a woman named Grushenka, and ultimately over pride. Dmitry wants to be good, he just doesn't know how to be good. His confession, "I'm a scoundrel, but I love you," sums up his essence perfectly. What's tragic about Dmitry is that he truly feels guilt, even when he's innocent. And that's why I had such a deep sense of empathy for this character, even though he's incredibly flawed. When his father is murdered, Dmitry's arrested because everyone assumes he must have done it. And honestly, even Dmitry thinks he could have, even though he didn't. He's haunted by his own capacity for violence. Dostoevsky uses Dmitry to explore the idea that the road to redemption begins with suffering. Dmitry's punishment becomes almost like a kind of purification. His passion, once destructive, begins to turn towards something transcendent, love that's no longer selfish, but sacrificial. Then we have Ivan Karamazov, the middle brother. As I mentioned, I would kind of characterize him as the man of reason. He's the intellectual, and Ivan was my favorite character. I'm always drawn to these types of characters for a number of reasons that I won't go into right now, but I would say that Ivan is probably one of Dostoevsky's most brilliant creations. He's a man that is torn between intellect and morality. He's rational, skeptical, and even noble in his despair. His great rebellion against God is one of the most famous passages in literature. Ivan doesn't deny God's existence. He rejects God's world because it's built on innocent suffering. He says to one of his brothers, "It's not that I don't accept God, Alyosha. It's that I do not accept his world." The Grand Inquisitor chapter, and if you've read this book, you'll know exactly which chapter I'm referring to, which Ivan tells as a parable, is his masterpiece of blasphemy and compassion. In it, Christ returns to earth during the Spanish Inquisition, and the Inquisitor tells him that humanity doesn't want freedom. It wants comfort. That we'd rather serve authority than face the anguish of moral choice. And I laugh because this couldn't be more truer than the state of the world today. Like, it really couldn't be. It really couldn't be. It's just so apt, honestly. This is why the classics are so important, right? Because they have a timelessness to their quality. When we see Ivan's trajectory kind of from the start all the way up to where he ends up at the end, his intellectual rebellion leads him to madness. It's almost like a prison in itself. He meets the devil, or rather a hallucination of his own inner corruption. And the devil is sarcastic, pathetic, self-pitying, a reflection of Ivan's rationalism turned sour. It's like an extreme of what Ivan could be. Through Ivan, Dostoevsky shows how the mind, unanchored by love, can collapse under its own weight. He's not punished by society, he's punished by his own conscience. And this actually reminds me of the main character in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov. He has some similar parallels to Ivan's journey, in my opinion, but it's kind of inverted because Raskolnikov starts off a bit mad and then over time he kind of mellows out a little bit by the end of the book. But it is honestly one of the best characters I've ever read, like genuinely. Now let's move on to the third brother, and that is Alyosha Karamazov, the man of faith. And Alyosha is very much the spiritual center of the book. He's gentle, compassionate, and seemingly pure, but his goodness isn't naive. Under the guidance of Father Zoshima, Alyosha learns a radical idea: that each person is responsible for everyone else's sins. Each of us is guilty before all and for all, Zoshima teaches, and Alyosha takes it to heart. When Zoshima dies and his body begins to decompose faster than expected, the public takes it as a sign that he wasn't truly holy. Alyosha is absolutely devastated by this. His faith nearly collapses, but instead of losing it, he transforms it. He comes to see holiness not in miracles, but in love, humility, and everyday kindness, which I think is the true spirit of like pure faith. Like it's those kind of values, it's those things that you try to strive for. Alyosha's storyline with the group of schoolboys, especially the sickly Ilyusha, is one of the most moving in the book. His compassion helps heal others' suffering, even as he carries his own and also his family's. He's Dostoevsky's vision of redemption, not through argument, but through love. Love that bears the weight of the world without despair. Then we have two other characters I want to briefly mention. We have Smerdyakov and Father Zoshima. So Smerdyakov, the servant, and perhaps Fyodor's illegitimate son, is the dark mirror of Ivan. He listens to Ivan's ideas and morality and concludes that if there's no God, then murder is justified. He's the literal murderer of the father, but also the spiritual product of the other's failures. He acts out the intellectual and emotional chaos of the family. His suicide later is the final collapse of a man without faith or purpose. On the other end of the spectrum stands Father Zoshima, the wise elder. His teachings form the moral backbone of the novel, that salvation begins with self-awareness and compassion. Zoshima's death and failure to be miraculously preserved in holiness might seem to disprove faith, but Dostoevsky flips that expectation. Holiness, he says, isn't about perfection, it's about love, ultimately. Before I jump into themes, I'm just going to spend 2 or 3 minutes just highlighting what folks might struggle with as they read this book, because it is not an easy read. I will just give that a heads up. It is a lot more difficult than Crime and Punishment. If you're new to Dostoevsky, I would not recommend starting here because I think it might deter some people, given that it is very academic in places and there's a lot of different threads and it's deeply philosophical. The first hurdle is length and density. I don't think Dostoevsky believes in brevity, and characters go on long monologues about morality, freedom, the existence of God, and sometimes it's not clear where the story is even heading. Modern readers, I think by today's expectation, where we have tighter plots and, you know, books that don't really kind of entertain philosophical meanderings, I think they might struggle with that, so just keep that in the back of your mind. I think the translation can also affect your experience. Older translations like Constant Garnet's are readable, but they sometimes flatten Dostoevsky's energy. More modern versions like Pevier and Volokonsky preserve his rawness, but can feel heavier. I did read the latter and I really enjoyed it. It is definitely a dense book and it is definitely heavy in places, but I think overall they got the balance right. There's also the tone. The novel swings from tragedy to slapstick within a few pages. Fyodor Pavlovich, for example, is both horrifying and absolutely hilarious. Like, I actually did laugh and smile as I was reading parts of this book. It is a bit disorienting, and that is intentional. He wants us to feel the chaos of life. And finally, some readers might struggle with the overt religiosity. The novel is steeped in Orthodox Christianity, yet it's also one of the most honest examinations of doubt ever written, in my opinion. Even if you're not religious, it's worth reading as a deeply human struggle, one that transcends belief systems. So while it is a difficult book, it is also a book that rewards you 100-fold for the effort. It's less like you're reading a novel but more like you're having your soul interrogated. So if you like the sound of that, then definitely give it a go. Let's talk about themes now. So at the core of this book, there are themes discussed around faith, freedom, guilt, and love, the four forces that pull at every single human being. As it relates to faith and doubt, the tension between Ivan and Alyosha is the central spiritual conflict of the book. Ivan represents the cold clarity of reason, and Alyosha the warmth of faith. Dostoevsky never lets either side win. Instead, he shows that doubt and belief exist in the same heart, and I couldn't agree more with that. I think everybody has the capacity for both. Ivan's refusal to accept a world built on suffering, especially the suffering of children, is one of the most powerful rejections of theodicy ever written. If the suffering of children is the price of harmony, he says, I return my ticket. Alyosha doesn't argue with him, he responds with compassion instead. Faith in Dostoevsky's world is not about logic. It's about love that persists even when that logic fails. Then we've got freedom versus responsibility. The Grand Inquisitor parable embodies this theme perfectly. The Inquisitor tells Christ that humanity doesn't want freedom, it wants to be ruled. People can't handle the anxiety of moral choice, so they trade their freedom for security. Dostoevsky's terrifying insight is that both extremes, total freedom and total control, destroy the soul. True freedom, he says, must be paired with moral responsibility. I couldn't agree more. Then we have guilt and redemption. Every Karamazov is guilty, each in his own way. Dmitri for his violence, Ivan for his ideas, Alyosha for his passivity, Smerdyakov for his crime. But Dostoevsky's version of guilt isn't legal, it's spiritual. Each of us is guilty before all and for all. That's the key line of the book. We are all complicit in the world's suffering, and redemption begins when we accept that responsibility. Then there's love and forgiveness. Ultimately, the novel's answer to despair is love. Radical, self-sacrificing love. Father Zoshima's teaching that hell is the suffering of being unable to love might be the most beautiful line in the book, and one of the ones that I think about constantly. Whether it's Alyosha's love for others, Dmitri's repentance, even Ivan's torment, they all point toward the same truth. Salvation isn't found in reason, but in compassion. In the final scene, Alyosha tells a group of children, you must know that there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and more useful in life than some good memory. It's a gentle reminder that even in a world of chaos and cruelty, simple love can redeem us. Lastly, I do just want to touch on the role of women in this book, because I haven't actually talked about that just yet, but I think it's actually worth mentioning. The women in this book are often caught in the storm between the brothers, yet they carry a quiet power that really shapes the story. Grushenka, who I mentioned earlier, who at first seems manipulative and sensual, evolves into one of the most compassionate figures in the book. Her love for Dmitri becomes redemptive, transforming both of them. Dostoevsky uses her to explore how love, even passionate, imperfect love, can become a path to spiritual renewal. Katerina Ivanovna, by contrast, represents moral pride. Her generosity towards Dmitri is tangled with a need to prove her own virtue, and her suffering reveals how self-righteousness can be as destructive as sin. Even Lise, I think I said that wrong, but we'll just go with that, the young girl who teases Alyosha, shows another facet of the human soul, torn between innocence and cruelty. Dostoevsky's women are not merely romantic figures, they're moral and spiritual barometers. Through them, he tests the capacity for forgiveness, vulnerability, and redemption, often showing that women understand the heart's contradictions more clearly than the men. Before I wrap up, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking about the historical context of this book. Dostoevsky wrote The Brothers Karamazov in the 1870s, which was a period of intense ideological turmoil in Russia. The country was wrestling with modernization, Western liberalism, and the decline of traditional Orthodox values. Many of Dostoevsky's characters embody these tensions. Ivan represents the rising class of secular intellectuals influenced by European rationalism. Alyosha and Father Zoshima stand for the deep spiritual tradition of Russian orthodoxy. Dmitri, impulsive, emotional, divided, represents the Russian soul itself, torn between those two worlds. Dostoevsky's own life shaped the novel profoundly. He had once been a revolutionary, arrested and sentenced to death for political dissent before being sent to a Siberian prison camp. That experience, his brush with death, his suffering, and his eventual religious awakening completely transformed him. The Brothers Karamazov reflects that evolution. It's the vision of a man who has seen both the darkness of the human heart and the possibility of redemption through love and faith, a theme that carries throughout all of his other books. The novel also anticipates Russia's future. Ivan's moral nihilism foreshadows the revolutionary ideologies that would soon engulf the country. Dostoevsky saw what was coming, a world where people sought to build heaven on earth, but without God. So overall, The Brothers Karamazov is an absolutely wonderful book. It is one of those books that truly does transform you if you give it time to really settle. It is not an easy book. It is long, it's sometimes messy, and it's often very overwhelming, but that's what makes it real. It mirrors the confusion, guilt, and yearning of life itself. Dostoevsky doesn't give us neat moral lessons. He gives us people, their contradictory, suffering, and searching for meaning. He shows that redemption isn't a miracle, it is a choice made every day in how we love others around us. A lesson that I think a lot of us would do well to learn, because there seems to be a real lack of that going around, at least in the UK and also the US. The novel ends not with a resolution, but with hope. And that's what we can really get from this book and other Dostoevsky books. In Alyosha's final words to the boys, as I said earlier, you must know that there is nothing higher and stronger and more wholesome and more useful in life than some good memory. And I think that's perhaps what Dostoevsky wanted us to take away, that goodness survives not through argument, but through compassion, that even in a world of doubt, cruelty and chaos, love remains the last truth standing. The Brothers Karamazov is more than just a book. It's a mirror that is held up to the soul. And what you see in it will depend entirely on what you bring to it. So that's my review, folks. Let me know down below in the comments if you've read this book. I know some of you who have watched my channel have, so I'd love to hear your kind of overarching thoughts. If there was a particular character that you identified with, the only particular themes that you also identified with. This is an incredible book. I could do a video that's like 10 hours long and I would still barely scratch the surface. I am actually planning to do a deeper dive of this video when I do a reread of it, because I need to do a reread of it, and I might do like a channel read along or something like that. So if that's of interest, let me know down below in the comments, but I will definitely do a deeper dive when I do a reread, because it definitely deserves it. So thanks for watching, folks. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up and do consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Thanks for watching. Stay safe as always, take care, and I'll see you very, very soon. Bye.